Okay, today's October 1st, and today was the Republican Women Federated candidate. I guess they call it a forum. It was put on by a group of women that for decades in this community has promoted civic activism, civic mindedness, and political involvement. And I announced my candidacy months ago. I'm a registered Republican. I'm also extremely conservative. And pulled papers, qualified for the ballot, turned everything in on time, and my information was all public record on the city clerk's portion of the city website. And the strangest thing happened to Mr. Imbriano. I wasn't invited to this event. It's really odd because I didn't find out about it until somebody had mentioned to me that there's a candidate forum. Are you going, Joe? And I'm like, well, no, I wasn't invited. So we kind of pushed the issue a little bit and was given an excuse that, well, apparently there was some issue with his email. Well, mind you, this forum, this group is run by Sharon Nelson, who's married to Sean Nelson. They've had decades of political involvement in Fullerton. And I have a P.O. box, I have a phone number and an email on file with the city clerk with all the papers I pulled. So my candidate statement and my contact information is all there per the election code. She knew darn well where to find it. Now, okay, you don't want me showing up. I can understand, because this is just how the establishment in Fullerton operates. So I get an invitation, and then they put a date of July 10th on it as to when it was supposed to be originated or something, to try to make it seem like, you know, they sent it maybe before I pulled papers. I don't know what kind of game they were playing. Obviously, they didn't want me to come. So today was the day I showed up. And before I was able to get here, because I had children who had soccer games this morning, I had Mr. Levinson show up, and he was going to kind of start getting the ball rolling for me. And he was outside the library, which wasn't open at the time, waiting for somebody to come up in the library. And he said that he was listening to a conversation of two women that were talking, and one of them was asking a gentleman that was with her about, well, do you attend the city council meetings? And I guess he was inquiring why these people were here, why there were balloons outside the library. And he went on to talk about, yeah, I don't really go to those things. I don't have time for that. It doesn't really matter. And then this woman was talking about, yeah, I don't go to them either. You know, they're really not that important. Something along those lines that, you know, it's not really that important to go to these meetings. It turned out that that woman was Cynthia Thacker, who is one of the people that runs the Republican Women Federated group. And from what I understand, when Mr. Levinson introduced himself, she was pretty taken by the fact that she had just made a statement like that in front of someone like Barry. So that's kind of scary that we have these kind of people with this kind of cavalier attitude towards the civic involvement, yet they're promoting supposedly all this civic involvement. So I get into the meeting, and lo and behold, Bruce Whitaker doesn't show up today. I was kind of looking forward to him being there because I did have some issues I wanted to raise. I thought I saw his car in the parking lot. I know David Curley showed up this morning with his signs. David Curley was in the audience. David Curley, if you remember, is the one who did his homework and was probably given the information by Bruce to dig into on the Bray Dam. And then he produced some information. Barry Levinson dug in really deep on it, found a $5 million shortfall in a contract that was written over a 20-year period that Bruce Whitaker has since buried. Barry Levinson, if you remember, was a member of the Parks and Recreation Commission, and he was Bruce Whitaker's appointee. And Barry Levinson unsuccessfully but valiantly tried to get this issue looked at. He had brought this issue to the Parks and Rec Department several times in a formal presentation and discussed it at length, emailed Bruce Whitaker, texted Bruce Whitaker, presented Bruce Whitaker this information at City Council meeting. And Bruce Whitaker has completely refused to respond, acknowledge, or address this issue publicly. And so ironically, Mr. Curley is here supporting Bruce Whitaker, who has buried this $5 million issue. So I find that extremely ironic that he has somebody supporting him while he's actually burying the very issue that he tried as hard as he could to bring to fruition and bring to the public eye on the city council, at the city council meetings. So anyway, as I walk in, I'm greeted by a woman who I wasn't too sure who it was, but she introduced herself as Sharon Nelson. And she says, hello, Mr. Imbriano. Thank you for coming. We want to make sure that you don't make any negative comments, and we want to make sure that you don't make any negative comments about any fellow candidates, and we don't want you bringing up anything negative about Ed Royce. And she went on to say that this is a positive event. We're here to lift each other up. We're all Republicans. Well, I, first of all, do not own this group. I'm not the president of this group, so I'm going to be courteous. I'm going to abide by the ground rules that she laid forth. I was a little disappointed because, you know, we pledge allegiance and it's supposed to be conservative and it's supposed to be Republican, and yet how are we ever going to change the status quo if we can't air and discuss issues? Why does everybody in the power structure think bringing things up that are relevant is negative? Why does everybody in the power structure think talking about what's true that needs to be looked at is negative? And why is it off limits? Why are we having these meetings? I don't know. I mean, what is really happening is, in my opinion, the whole political scheme here in this town, especially the Republicans, are really locked down. So, you know, I think the forum went well. I think Mr. Nelson was very fair, the way he allotted time. The questions were interesting. One of the questions was brought up about SCAG, and I guess somebody in the audience had brought up that question, and the moderator, Mr. Nelson, refused to allow that question to be asked of the candidates. Went on to say that it really would require too much discussion. It really wasn't a matter of importance, when in fact, that is one of the key issues in this election. You know, ladies and gentlemen, the problem with the Fullerton voters is they don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and they blindly trust in these names and these institutions that for decades have hamstrung this community and left us with the condition of the city that we face. When we can't bring up issues that are totally relevant, especially with respect to high-density housing, we're dealing with a massive onslaught against the wishes and the will of the voters. There are plans to put 10-story buildings all over this town. They almost got away with it a couple years ago. We stopped it. It was called the DCCSP. And then here we are where they want to keep someone like me out of a candidate forum. And then once I get in here, they try to tell me not to be negative, not to bring certain issues up with certain candidates. Bruce Whitaker appointed a SCAG planner, Mayanne Johnson, to the Planning Commission. And as a matter of fact, making sure this was no accident, he knew full well, admittedly on video in the city council chambers during a meeting, that he knew who she was, and that she was his favorite pick out of 17 applicants. So, ladies and gentlemen, what does that tell you? It tells me that A, Bruce Whitaker does not know what he's doing, or B, he is part of the problem. And C, either way, I believe he's not fit to hold office. That is the biggest threat to our well-being and our quality of life in this community is overdevelopment. And here we have an entity who has placed a senior planner on our planning commission who cheer-led the DCCSP and who cheer-led the College Town proposal. So that's a big issue. And Bruce Whitaker didn't even have the guts to show up today. Now, the fact that I think that's highly suspect is they never even mentioned why he wasn't here. I thought that was very odd that they said, well, Bruce couldn't attend. I mean, he's a Republican, he's a conservative. So, you know, I guess a little later on, Ed Royce walks in, and I'm sitting up there fielding questions along with the rest of the candidates. And, you know, Jennifer Fitzgerald's asked about the coin ordinance, and she denies how they watered it down. And then she refers to the DCCSP as some sort of like civic engagement process with the community. Ladies and gentlemen, are you kidding me? That was a RAM job that almost went down. That thing was signed, sealed, and delivered, and it was in the council's lap. This was not a community engagement issue. This thing went through the traffic and circulation, it went through the planning commission, and it ended up at the city council, and this thing would have taken hundreds of acres and allowed them to be rezoned up to 10-story buildings, as long as they fit the cookie-cutter mold. Joe Fells was the final say, bypassing all the checks and balances of the planning commission and the council. That's insanity. That's undemocratic. It's an undemocratic power grab, and it is just ripe for a corrupt process. I won't even get into that, but the reality is Jennifer Fitzgerald is trying to spin it, making it seem like it's some sort of community outreach program, along with College Town. She did the same thing with the College Town issue today. She tried to call it some sort of a community involvement process. Are you kidding me? This thing was signed, sealed, and delivered. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars drawing this thing up. They had the plans. This thing was ready to go. Fortunately, we stopped it in the planning commission. So as the meeting progressed and we were done, Ed Royce walks in, and I noticed that he was curious about who had this tripod, and I can read lips from a distance, and I saw Mr. Royce. And he specifically asked Ms. Thacker and Ms. Nelson whose camera it was, and I could see them mention my name. Then he walked over to my table where I had my stuff, and he looked at what my stuff was, kind of sniffing around. And he made the gesture, hey, I don't want to be filmed. And so I got up as it wasn't my turn. I asked him, and he said, yes, I don't want to be filmed. And he said, because I don't want any of the federal stuff on film. So, you know, here we go. First they didn't want me coming. Then they tell me I can't talk about him. Then they tell me I can't talk about any of the candidates in terms of being negative. And then our congressman who holds no town hall meetings, who pretty much controls all the endorsements and who gets elected around here, says he doesn't want to be recorded during a public meeting at the library room. What's he hiding? What's he afraid of? Lin Ling Chang, same thing, didn't want to be recorded. I don't understand why he would not want this all over the internet. If he's so proud of what he's doing, and if he's so proud of what he came here to talk about, why would he not want all of his constituents to see him, you know, briefing the community? Just the opposite. Ladies and gentlemen, the Fullerton establishment is rotten to the core. We have people that are in office, namely Jennifer Fitzgerald, who direly needs to be replaced. She is a lobbyist for Kurt Pringle. She's a vice president of Kurt Pringle and Associates. That is a influence peddling operation. It is a backdoor entry to massive developers getting into the city council chambers and getting stuff through against the wishes of the voters. Kurt Pringle did not give her the VP position because she was good at what she did. She only got that position after she was elected to the city council. Jennifer Fitzgerald needs to be thrown out of office. She is not honest and forthright with her constituents. If you watch her closely, she's only smiling when the camera's on, and she's very clever as to what she says, and she always puts on this little act about how she cares and how she loves Fullerton. Let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. If you love Fullerton, you would not be allowing the things that are going on to continue, including all these giveaways for these $200,000 bathroom jobs and for the firemen, and all these raises and all this overtime going on, and all these pension increases, and all of these things. And then she's taking credit for road repair that county money, Measure M money, and gas tax money is orchestrating. Look, it is high time to break this death grip that these phony conservatives have on this community. I'm telling you right now, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Joe Imbriano. I'm running for Fullerton City Council. For years, look me up. Look on YouTube, look on Google. I've been coming to these meetings for years. We have candidates who don't even show up to the council meetings, but I guess they're qualified to run. As a matter of fact, have you ever seen Jesus Silva speak at a city council meeting? Have you ever seen Sue Kapinski speak at a council meeting? Have you ever seen Jonathan Mansuri speak at a city council meeting? Have you ever seen Mr. Sargent speak at a city council meeting? Have you ever seen those people? I bet you've never heard of those names until the signs have gone up. How does it make any sense that Ed Royce would endorse somebody who hasn't spoken to a city council meeting in a decade? Well, her mom's run this group that I attended here today, and look at what this group is all about. It's about censorship. It's about protecting the establishment. It's not about an open and honest dialogue. It is about protecting their own. It's about circling the wagons. It is about endorsing a candidate who admittedly, by her own statements today, did not understand certain things and didn't have answers to certain issues that are crucial to the inner workings and the ongoing business of city government. And Royce stamps his approval and endorsement on that person because her mom's been running this thing. I think she's a nice lady, Susan Kapinski. Is she qualified for this job? I don't believe so. There's just no way, because just being nice. Ladies and gentlemen, we're dealing with sharks. These are shark-infested waters. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. This is a city government. This is a huge commercial enterprise. The city government is a corporation. We cannot have the checks and balances in the hands of people who can be easily duped. We cannot put someone on the city council who's going to be guided or controlled by another council member, ostensibly Bruce Whitaker, who recruited her to run. That was admitted by her own mother. So, you know, we have somebody that they're running to siphon votes away from me. Royce is stamping his approval on there, and it's ultimately designed to split the vote to get Bruce reelected, or Larry Bennett elected, and Jennifer Fitzgerald elected. Either way, if Fitzgerald gets reelected, nothing's going to change. Ladies and gentlemen, you need to elect me. You need to elect somebody that has the guts and has the ability to call it like it is. That's not afraid of the fallout. That's not afraid of the ramifications. The only thing I've said over and over again is all I care about are the residents. I care about what's best for the community. I'm not here for my boss. I'm not here for my political controllers. I'm not here for the newspaper I'm connected with. I'm not here for any of these. I don't have any connections. The only thing I have is my connections to this community through my family, through my friends, through the things I see that are important. We cannot have people blindly voting for people that are on the wrong side of the issues. We cannot have people continue to respect and hold in high regard and high esteem people that are duplicitous, that are not forthright, that make statements that simply aren't true, that are designed to confuse people that aren't paying attention, who mince words. The fact is, ladies and gentlemen, between Mr. Levinson and I, with other people's help, I'm not going to take credit for all this stuff, but we were extremely instrumental in stopping College Town from becoming a reality that would have added 100,000 people to this community. For stopping College Town, which have added another 4,000 apartments and shut down a freeway on-ramp. We've stopped other projects, cell towers, dirty deals with parkland going to lease extensions, not even another 30 years on a lease. It's got 20 years left for the Summit House. I mean, that's a whole nother issue. Look, these people are not who you think they are, okay? Google them. You won't even find any information on half these candidates because they really stand for nothing. They say nothing. They talk out of both sides of their mouths. They don't have any real substance or principle or vision, and they're playing kind of both sides of the aisle trying to get along. And you know what Ling Ling Chen kept saying today is that we have to get along. You know, we have to, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have to get along if we're not going to agree on something. I've been in the private sector for 27 years. I've been married for almost 20 years. I have 4 children. I know how to get along with people. And I also know how to get things accomplished. I also know how to get things done. I've been a success in my business endeavors. I've been a success in my family life. I've been a success in my marriage. So you can't tell me that I can't get along with people. I know exactly how to get along with people. But I also know another thing, and that is how not to let people hamstring me, because I will be here for you, the voters, the residents, the taxpayers, and most of all, my constituents. I urge you to vote for me on November 8th. My name is Joe Imbriano for Fullerton City Council, out here in front of City Council after a very long day on the campaign trail. Thank you and God bless. Good night. How'd that go? Good?
Yes.